In this orthokeratology case, we had previously moved the OZ and IC out a little bit farther to help this patient who was experiencing glare at nighttime. And now the patient still has some glare, but the bigger problem is we have undercorrected cylinder in the post-wear refraction. In the baseline refraction, we have about a diopter and a half. After lens wear, the patient still has about a diopter remaining, and that's causing blurred vision. So with ortho-K, we do expect to correct about half, so maybe be left with 75. One is not too far from that. Sometimes we get a little bit more, in which case we celebrate. Sometimes we don't get the full amount. And so if we are plateauing at pretty close to half, we're probably not going to get a whole lot more treatment by giving just the patient more time. So I would go ahead and make some changes to the lens at this point. There are two things we can do. One is to go to an oval optic zone and to build in a little bit more topo demand in the vertical meridian, since this is with the role of astigmatism. The second is to just build in the extra topo demand in the vertical meridian and leaving the optic zone spherical. In cases where the astigmatism is fairly apical, where it's mostly right in the center towards the visual axis and not really limbus to limbus, adjusting just the topo demand without going to an oval optic zone seems to work okay, but going to an oval zone will work just fine as well, so I'll just demonstrate both ways. So going to an oval OZ first, what we're going to do is go to 50% mode, and right now we're at 7.0 and 7.6, I'm guessing. So this is going to drop down to 6.4 and 7.0. Our original power here is 1. And I'm going to put the entire differential in. So if we started with a +1 in the horizontal meridian, we're going to want our topo demand here to be about 250. Even though we were getting some correction of the corneal cylinder with just a spherical lens, I do like building in the entire amount. Because if we're going to make a change, we might as well make a change that's really going to correct the cylinder. And then since we're in free form, we'll have to do the same thing in the inferior meridian. Computer's kind of running slow, so I'm just going to pause the video. So here we have our new lens with the oval optic zone and higher demand. It's about 0.3 of a millimeter flatter in the vertical meridian than it is in the horizontal. Here we're back to the lens that the patient's currently wearing, and now I'll show you how to just increase topo demand vertically without going to an oval zone. This one's actually a little bit easier. We're going to do the exact same thing, build in about a diopter and a half, but we'll do that without moving any of the positions of the edges of the curves. Okay, so we're still in 50% mode. I'm going to do the same thing here. Okay. So if we look at the back surface here, you can still see the toricity, but the zone is round. So when we don't move the OZ and IC in, we get a much taller curve, and so potentially we have to move more tissue. But since we're starting with a fairly low refractive error, that might be okay. If it were a -6 or 7, then sometimes we get clearance here that's 120, 130 microns, especially since we have a large OZ for this patient, and too much clearance we can get insufficient molding. So in those cases, we may not have a choice and we have to move the OZ inward. But in this case, I think we can go either way, maybe even try one approach for either eye and do a little sample of one experiment for yourself. Regardless of which strategy you use, the last thing I would do is really make sure we seal off in the vertical meridian. So I'm going to write it's a little bit cut off on the video here, but we have an initial sagittal depth of 1046 right now. I'm going to bump this up to 1056 and just make sure superiorly and inferior we're landing on the cornea. So I'm going to bump this down. Still in 50% mode. Okay, that's 1056. And then on this one, we're starting at 1065, so 1075. And we're at 1075. So this is just to make sure we don't get where we get minimal seeping, especially in the vertical meridian where we want more molding. So hopefully the examples here are helpful. Best luck with your patient.